Welcome to the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast. I am your host, Ann Alston, and it is my pleasure to bring quality programs to all of you. I am so excited to be here yet again with another empowering speaker that's going to talk to us today about her background and what she's doing in the HR profession that's going to help everybody in terms of health and wellness. I also want to encourage everybody to please take the time to fully listen to the podcast and really connect with the speakers who is giving out this information. Also, check out all of the pages and listen to all of the speakers because the information that they're sharing you cannot get anywhere else. So please take advantage of this unique opportunity. Just in case you didn't know, the purpose of the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast is to not only share our industry information, but we also want to encourage career seekers and working professionals to enter their line of work. We also want to take a moment to thank our corporate partners and sponsors, a family of authors, Butler Armstead Consulting Solutions, Human Resource Learning Center, J&F Enterprises, and Women Offering Wealth, along with many of our other business partners and sponsors that's helping to make this event a success. So today, again, I want to mention that we have another amazing HR professional here. I want to bring to the podcast Tiffany Holmes. Tiffany is a former HR professional with 16 years of HR experience. She is an American Council of Exercise Certified Health Coach. She's also an author and the owner of Total Transformation Wellness Coaching. Tiffany started her business after beginning her own wellness journey, and she also lost 150 pounds during that journey, which I think is phenomenal. The purpose of her business is to not only help with her own wellness, but to assist individuals in achieving their personal and professional goals while obtaining and maintaining good health, mind, body, and spirit. So with that, I would like to bring to the podcast Tiffany Holmes. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited, girl. I want to hear about you and your journey and how did you get started with all that? And first of all, let's just talk about you in general. How did you get into the HR field?
Completely by accident. I actually started out wanting to be an attorney because the one thing I've always known about myself is I wanted to help people. And so I thought that Claire Huxtable was like a real live thing and that I was going to be like her. However, when I took my first pre-law class in college, I realized that wasn't going to be the career for me. So I had to quickly let that go. And then I fell into HR simply by getting an internship. And I got to see the different things that the Human Resources Department helps employees with, from employee relations to performance management. And the coaching aspect really is what piqued my interest. And so after I graduated from college, I set out to find an HR role that would allow me to help people.
Okay, so once you got into the HR role and you were in that role for a while and you loved the fact that they were coaching, was there a particular coaching style that you liked in particular? Because I know that HR professionals do a variety of different types of professional development training in addition to teaching about employee relations information. So was there a particular area of coaching that you were just really drawn to?
I particularly like the employee development and employee relations because I feel like communication is such, it will make or break a relationship. And I'm all about relationship building also and seeing people move forward in companies. And what I realized early on in my HR career was people weren't being promoted or being able to advance in the organizations that I worked for, oftentimes because of communication barriers. And so people were deemed to be hard to work with or uncooperative, standoffish, and all these things. And it was like, I think the style of communication is just where the breakdown is happening. So I made it my business to coach the managers on how to see potential employees and how to use different styles of communication that would reach their employees and help build and correct some of those broken relationships. And then on the flip side, I worked with the employees population to get them to understand, your manager isn't the devil or a mean person. And so I wanted them to understand, and even if you think they are, and in the cases where some of them actually were, you still had to deal with them, and you still had to do all the things you were supposed to do in order for me to be able to assist you to either mitigate that issue or get you out of a situation or help it work out in your favor. So, really working on people's communication style and then setting goals. I think people always have these targets, but they don't know how to get to them. And so I always worked with managers and employees to say, so what's the end game? What do you want to see happen? What's the outcome that you're expecting? And from there, we would work backwards to get to that. So what are the steps that we need to take in order to make that happen?
Okay. And so how effective was that starting off the gate? Did you find that there was a lot of resistance when you tried to go in and get the two groups to see your point of view one on one?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny, actually. There was a lot of resistance in most instances in the beginning of my career because I was younger, I was African American, I was female, so I had all, and I was usually the only woman or African American or young person in the company, let alone in my position in a management role. So there was always resistance just based on those things. Then you come in with concepts that people were not familiar with, and because most of the companies were privately held, and they were used to doing their own thing whenever they wanted to. So to have someone push back pretty insistently that they can't just do what they wanted to do caused some tension, but I'm persistent, and I pride myself on being a decent communicator. So I was able to win people over. And then, of course, as you see things becoming more effective and working out, then obviously people become more receptive, and then it just became a part of the organization's programming. So it's just what we did for new managers. It became a style that we used for performance management and everything else.
Okay, so you said something really interesting, which I'm not surprised that there was resistance. I kind of wanted to hear your perception on that. But you said something interesting, which is in most cases, you were either the youngest or the only female or the only African American in that particular realm. Was this the case in terms of your experience among most of the HR professionals that you know of? Because what I'm trying to get at is finding out exactly how many of us are actually seeking this type of career. How many of us are actually excelling to a management level within the human resources industry.
Hmm.
And I kind of want to get your experience on what you found based on any training that you've been to, any conferences, or any other type of collaborations that you may know of.
Hmm. So what I've experienced in my HR career is there are a lot of women in the field in general, and then there are a good number of African American women. The difference between me and what I've seen from most other women in HR and most other African American women in HR in particular is I had a generalist background. So out the gate, I covered recruiting, employee relations, payroll and benefits, compensation models, organizational development, training, the full gamut of HR, whereas most people who get into HR, they focus in one area like recruiting or maybe payroll. So they don't have that full team. And what happens is a lot of times when you get pigeonholed into those segments, and those become your specialty or expertise, and then it becomes hard to get into a management role where you're more exposed and have a bigger voice, so to speak, in the field of HR because you've been so siloed by picking that one specialization.
So how do you get out of that type of situation? What can you do that will be able to, that you can turn things around after you've been pigeonholed or siloed, like you said?
Mhm. So I think the main thing you have to do is you have to know who the decision makers are in an organization, and particularly within the HR department. And then you have to get with those people. Inevitably in HR, there are always specific projects. There's an open enrollment period every year. There's the payroll and benefit stuff that comes along at the first of the year where we're getting W-2s ready and all those other kinds of things. If those aren't your areas of focus, they always need help during certain peak times. Usually over the summer there's a big push for interns, so recruiting will need some assistance. If you're not working in those areas currently, but you want some exposure and experience, volunteer to help out. Do some self-study. Join HR organizations like SHRM so that you're current on changing trends and laws and practices in HR. Trust me, the HR manager doesn't always want to stay, they always want to stay current on the law, so I won't say that, but they love to find someone else who's interested in that also. And so just pop into their office. Hey, did you hear about this new law? It's on the federal level. How do you think it's going to impact us on the state level? Things like that are invaluable, and then it puts you on the radar, and that helps you begin to transition. Once people see that you have a diverse skill set, they're more inclined to pull you into those areas and make it known that that's what you want to do. So when you're goal setting for the year and you're talking about your performance review, talk about your personal development. I don't think that's something we do enough because we're like, hey, they paid me to do this job. I don't want to rock the boat. They'll think I'm not happy. No, you really do have to speak up and let it be known what you're looking to do. And more often than not, your employer will respond to that and begin to help you develop in that area.
You know, that's really interesting that you kind of alluded to the fact that if you're in that position, that you're not considering your own performance because you're so busy trying to focus on everybody else's performance and everybody else's personnel needs and things of that nature, but not really focused on your own performance. And I think that that's key. And I like the fact that you tied in that no matter what you're doing, whether it's HR or whatever, you have to build on your transition if you want to move to a higher level. And we all have to understand that regardless of what position that we're in, there's a constant roadmap that we have to continue to build over time with our careers. And so, for everybody listening, I hope you're taking in what Tiffany is saying if you are interested in going into the HR field, because as she said, there's so many different ramifications that you got to face, particularly if you are trying to be a communicator on so many different levels and that you're trying to maneuver in, and don't forget about your own performance. So I want to turn the conversation to your transition, your actual transition from when you left HR and kind of went into total wellness. And so I wanted to hear how that occurred and how you come up with the concept of your organization.
Sure. So, gosh, it's a long story, so I'll try and keep it brief. But I love HR. I've loved it since my internship, and so walking away from it wasn't the easiest thing that I ever did. However, I took the pieces of it that I loved, the communication, the helping people, the coaching, and I made those things into a business for me because where I felt restricted in HR was I worked for someone else. And so at the end of the day, their rules decided what the outcome would be in every situation. And I get that, but the rules weren't always fair. And there was still bias. And so there were still occasions when I had to know the law and find a way to make us compliant to it while not always doing the right thing. So it was never illegal. It was never.
What is the mindset of having you do that? Because it seems like a contradiction. They want you to follow the law, but not totally follow the law, but not be illegal at the same time.
Mhm. You know what? I think it's human nature at the end of the day. We are all human, and sometimes we operate on emotion, and then there are other times we operate on the bottom line. And the thing that I try and encourage people to understand is companies first, last, and always are about the bottom line. There are some companies that care more about their employees than others, absolutely. And then there are some that are just going to do what they are required to do by law. And then there are those that are going to do what they can within the limits of the law. And so the loyalty that we feel towards employers because they pay us and they provide benefits and all that other kind of stuff as if they do that to us for free, not because we're actually putting in the time, is overrated. Because when the company needs to reduce the workforce to save on their bottom line, or they need to cut benefits because the cost is too astronomical or something they don't want to incur any longer, the employee feels the pain of that because it's always an employer first mindset. And so when you're in HR, you see that up close and personal. And for some people, it's not an issue. For me, whose sole purpose in life is assisting people to live their best life, it just really became more and more of a conflict or a weight on me. So I said, how can I combine the
Right.
things that I love and still be true to who I am? And
And,
that's how.
right.
That's
Okay.
how my
So,
came.
okay, I want to dig deeper in this point because I want to flip the script
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the HR perspective because you hit on something that I think that will be a good thing to know. A lot of people, including myself, have been downsized or let go because, just like you said, they have to look at the bottom line. But what I would love for people to hear from an HR professional is their perspective of how they feel when they have to make decisions to cut staff
Mm-hmm.
because of that. And I know you touched on it a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but I really want them to understand what you guys go through when you have to sit back and actually make these types of decisions
Mm-hmm.
amongst many employees that you build a relationship with because it's not just the employee that's feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the HR or the managers are also feeling it as well. And I kind of wanted you to speak on that.
Sure. It is never easy to let go of someone. You can have the most stringent policy ever when you talk about downsizing. It's anybody who's been in the company less than a year. It's anybody who's had a performance review that's mediocre or lower. It's anybody who's been on a performance plan in the last year. It doesn't matter how particular it is and how even maybe justified it is. I've seen people steal from the company before and have to be let go for cause, obviously, but it's never easy. Doing that for 16 years, I've let go of hundreds of people for many, many different reasons. No termination is any easier than the other because at the end of the day, people have livelihoods, they have families that they need to support themselves, and there's no guarantee what their next position will be or how long it'll take them to get it. So I don't think that anybody goes into a termination, no matter what side of the table you sit on, and comes out of there unaffected.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I've been through not myself, but I had my own issues with downsizing, but in particular, being in the information technology field in the position that I was in, I was able to touch a lot of people in terms of how I work with them and seeing people coming in the office and have no idea that in the next hour or next minute that will be their last time in the office and don't even get to say goodbye to people. It is really hard for not only managers but also for the employees that still work there.
Mhm.
And I want people to understand that this is the reason why this podcast exists. It's the reason why you have career coaches that teach you career preparation because careers, as much as they can be long term endeavors, they're temporary. They're
Mhm.
temporary until you get to your next step. And if we just change our mindset on how we see ourselves as a working professional, then we wouldn't get too comfortable in our
Exactly.
position and that we will take advantage of the time that we have on a job to better
Right.
our skills and also really utilize the HR professional because they have training there. They have things that they can offer you that will help you with your skills. But if you're thinking that all they do is benefits or
Mhm.
all they do is handle your personnel record, you're
Right.
actually not taking advantage of some of the information that they could be providing to you. And personally, I made it a point that I would talk to my HR professional to find out if there's tuition reimbursement or are
Mhm.
there any classes that I can qualify for that can help me get a certification or anything that they can afford me that will help me on my goal. And I'm encouraging everybody to do that. And also reach out to Tiffany because she's here. She can answer your questions. She can definitely help you on the right track if you feel that you're having an HR issue, because that's the whole goal. So let's talk about your journey. You lost 150 pounds. Congratulations. Whoop whoop.
Thank you.
I'm gonna tell you, I'm struggling to keep this 50 pounds off. I know how hard it is. So, okay, that journey, I know is probably a personal journey for you, but then this led to you opening up your business, and then you were going to talk about how to do something at 4% a day. So I wanted you to talk about that as well because I'm really interested in that.
Okay. So, quickly, my journey started out because, like most people, I was focused on my career. I wanted to move up in organizations, and because I started so young but was qualified, they were always hesitant to put me in management positions. So at one point, I was going to school full time and working full time, and I was going to school for my MBA. And I thought everything was going fine, and I wasn't paying attention to my personal health. So I was putting on weight, putting on weight, putting on weight. Bought a condo, was traveling, had an active social life, dating, and everything seemed great. But then I began to notice as I climbed from my parking space in my garage up to the first floor to get to our lobby, which was only 14 stairs, I was completely out of breath. I was super winded. And I was like, this can't be. And then I was like, you know what? You've gotten too big, Tiff. It's past time for you to start taking some of this weight off. And I looked at it and I was like, man, I need to lose, though, like 200 pounds. How do you do that when to date I've been unsuccessful at losing and keeping off even 10 pounds? Because, you try all these different things. And so I was like, you know what? We're just going to keep it simple. We're going to start out by doing some of the things that you know you should be doing, and you'll work your way up from there. So I knew I needed to exercise, so I started walking. And I knew that eating 2 meals a day from someone's drive-through wasn't good, but I couldn't figure out how to rearrange my schedule so that I could cook. So I said, well, you know what? You can only eat half of whatever you get at the drive-thru, and you'll save the other half for later. And so I broke those down into 4 meals. And as I started to see results from those things, then I added other things like, okay, you can't eat fast food every day. You're going to have to find a way to cook. And so then I started to do meal prepping. And once I got better with the walking, then it was like, okay, well, you know what? Try and throw a little jogging in there. So I did that, and then I went back to the gym, and then I got a trainer, and then the weight started to come off. So in the first year, I lost 92 pounds. I was still going to school full time.
Wow,
I was still,
92?
yes,
Wow.
I was still going to school full time. I was still working full time, and I was still losing weight. And so I thought to myself, hey, I'm really using the same principles that I use for goal setting in HR, which the base level is the SMART goals, but the second piece is the see the end goal and work your way back. So how do you lose 200 pounds? By losing 1 pound first. So how do you lose 1 pound? You do this. How do you lose 10 pounds? Then you do this. And so I thought, this is why people don't lose weight, because they don't know how when it looks so insurmountable. So I can show people how to still be impactful and move up in their career while they're taking care of themselves physically. And as I went on my physical journey, I began to see how mentally and emotionally I was changing also. And I didn't have any esteem issues. I wasn't an emotional eater. I didn't have any of those things to contend with when I was heavier, but I still became even more confident than I already was. Emotionally, I became even stronger. I became even more fearless and all those things. And I was like, people need to know this. And
Yeah.
as I really began to look at what I was doing, that's how the 4% came along. 4% is 1 hour of your day. Everybody has 4% to give to themselves. We give so much to everything and to everyone else, jobs, friends, families. And it's like, can you spare 1 hour for yourself? Can you do 1 hour's worth of self-care per day? And if you can, and I know you can, and if not, you can contact me and I can tell you how, then you will begin to see your health improve. Even if weight loss isn't your thing, your stress levels will come down. You can work on just being happier, meditating, being more social, just beginning to really enjoy the life that you've created for yourself with the pursuit and all the hard work you've done.
And yeah, and that is so true because what you said in a nutshell just sums it up. You can lose weight and be happy, but if you don't change your mindset to go along with it, it's not going to work. People lose weight all the time and they gain weight, but what
Mm-hmm.
changes you and what really drives your body to react the way you want is changing your mindset. When I lost the 50 pounds, I can tell you my confidence was like through the roof. I may not be the most slimmest person, but I'm healthy. I'm healthy
Exactly.
in mind and body. And as long as I am healthy in that regard, then my body is going to feel good and my mind is going to feel good. And people are going to notice that I'm attracting positive and good things. And so that's what we need to maintain in our world today. So what other initiatives are you working on in addition to getting people to realize they have 4% of their life they need to focus on, as well as HR issues? What else are you working on?
Mhm. So I've recently completed my book, and the book is called Balancing the Scale, and it's about what I learned while losing 150 pounds. And it really talks about behavior change because I think everyone, when they're trying to lose weight, they look for, okay, so what did you eat and what exercises did you do? And those things are interesting and they're important, but the thing that most people fail or succeed on is their mindset. If you don't change your mind, which helps you change your behaviors, chances are you're not going to be successful. And that transcends whatever the goal is. So that's the same thing that I found for people that I coached in HR. It's the same thing for weight loss. It's the same thing in life. If you're stuck or set in doing things your way, then that's where you're going to stay. Once you
Exactly.
open your mind and really say, what do I need to do to be successful? And then you get yourself positioned and ready to do those things. Once you act on them, the results are just days away. You start to see the change instantly, but it begins in your mind.
Yeah, and you know what, everybody, I hope you guys are taking all this in from everyone who is on this podcast because just like Tiffany, she is following along with what everybody else is doing, even though they've done it in their own way, is to change your mindset so that you can be healthier financially, spiritually, physically, mentally, in every single way that you can possibly be healthy because we as an African American community and minority community as a whole need to be more healthier so that we can have a more positive outcome in our lives. So, Tiffany, this is a networking event and people are listening as well as people participating. What do you need from them that will help you with your cause?
Mhm. I need exposure. I need for people to know about the 4% way of life. I need for people to know that really success rests in your happiness. It's not just about being a CEO, an entrepreneur, or making $1 million or any of those things. If you're not enjoying life because you're not healthy mentally, emotionally, or physically, then is it worth it? And I want us to change the trend. So I want people to all get on board with total wellness. And total wellness is just like you said, it's financially fit, it's physically fit, it's mentally fit, it's emotionally fit, it's spiritually fit. That's the legacy that we want to leave behind. And that's the legacy that I think has been lacking in our culture for a couple generations now because we've been so focused on just working hard and making money and stuff like that, which is all important, but we've got to get back to total wellness.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, with that, I want to thank you, Tiffany, for being on the podcast today. I am definitely elated to hear that we have to have our 4%. We have to have our 4%. And a lot of times, and me included, I will come home and get right on the bandwagon and forget the fact that I have 1 hour that I need to contribute to myself, if not even more to myself. And so I want to encourage everybody to please reach out to Tiffany if you have further questions about what she talked about in her podcast. Her contact information is below. I want to remind everybody that we have over 50 speakers that are here sharing their journey and their experience and their publications. So please make sure you pick up a book, make sure you patron them, connect with them, collaborate with them, and just basically work together to build a strong community. And so, Tiffany, I want to thank you for being on the podcast today.